All right, welcome everyone to Draw It Out
Verbally.
with Peter and Scott. Thank you for joining us today, Scott.
Thanks for having me.
This is Peter, and I'm here with my good friend Scott over there. And you may recognize him. I had him here on the channel a couple of times. In fact, one time he sent over one of his sketchbooks. He's an amazing artist. He does ink, watercolor, and today we're going to talk with him a little bit, maybe a little informal interview, ask him about a little bit of his art making process and an upcoming solo show he has, which is pretty exciting. So let's get into that. And Scott, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah, thanks for taking the time to do it from one drawer to the next.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us here today. Um, First of all, can you explain a little bit about what this show is? You mentioned it briefly to me, but um, like
Sure.
what's,
Yeah.
what's going
Yeah.
on?
So I uh, I've been. I have a lot of shows. This is maybe my 16th solo show. I've been doing this for a long time, but I haven't had one in like almost a decade, and I tend to work in four different bodies of work. Sorry, I'm gonna sneeze in 1 second.
All right, that's
Okay.
fine.
Uh,
Okay,
sorry.
bless you.
Four different bodies of work: architecture, food, anatomy, and botanical stuff. And I had some of my earlier stuff was from architecture. The architectural stuff is sort of my most crowd pleasy type of work, where it's like mostly isometric views of roofless buildings. Um, and I get bored of it and I don't want to do it for a while.
Yeah,
And then every once in a while, I'll get like a project that comes up. Like there's this crazy production company in Las Vegas called Spiegel World. And they actually started in Brooklyn, but they're like burlesque, kinda, but they're really professional. They're not like, it's not like something you'd see in your backyard, like the backyard shows, the burlesque shows you have and where you live.
yeah, all my shows. Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
Mine aren't professional. Yeah.
very amateur. That's what I've heard. Anyway, they they're in Vegas now. They started in Brooklyn and Dumbo, and now they're in Vegas and they're in Atlantic City and they're in maybe New Orleans too. And they just bought a small town in California. But so they have four different shows that they do in Las Vegas. And they asked me, and they have a restaurant that's all art. Like they have some commissioned art, and it's all really cool art from contemporary artists. And so they commissioned a big piece from me
Oh,
of of that type of work. And because I was in between studios, I was moving from one studio to the next, and it was like a 2 year process. I wasn't able to make one giant piece, so I did it in small 12 by 12-inch panels, and I did 16 of them. So the whole thing is 4 feet by 4 feet, and these panels all fit together. And they have four different shows. Let's see if I can remember them. Absinthe is one. Atomic Salon or Saloon is another. Um, Disco is another one, and I forget. Opium is the fourth one. And so each one has its own theme. And so I did. I like saw the shows, and then I talked to the art directors and saw the costumes and stuff, and I made four different panels for each show, and those four panels all fit together. So that was a way. Essentially, I'm telling you that because after I get tired of doing these architectural drawings for a while, that was a way to get me excited about it again. It was a new challenge. Um, and throughout the whole process, while I'm making these, one of the biggest challenges is to make the whole thing work logically together. So, like when you're drawing, like a platform up here and you've got something below it, it has to make sense visually as you're looking at it. Like you can, because I like to have people imagine they're walking around the spaces. So
yeah.
then, so then after I did that one, I was like, I've always been a huge MC Escher fan ever since I was a little kid, and he did all those really cool, impossible um, drawings
Hmm.
and prints of like a waterfall, kind of like a perpetual waterfall and stuff like that. And so I started to sort of teach myself how to do that, and that became a new challenge. And you can see that in, so I have like in my sketchbook, I have, so these are like sort of notes on trying to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, like little studies,
Yeah,
experiments.
right. And so I would take those studies, and then I would do like more sort of completed studies. So you can see how like this is the same level as this, but it's actually on one side, it's on a different level.
Yeah.
This is a kind of a more subtle one.
Yeah.
Uh,
And make sure y'all go to Teplin.com and Scott's Instagram, which I'll put in the description if y'all want to flip through some of these yourself as well. Because there's tons of these he's done, and they're extremely. I'm looking at them on his website on my other monitor here, and they're extremely high quality. And there's so many of them. Oh yeah, there's a endless
that's like
waterfall.
yeah.
Yeah,
So it's sort of impossible, but it's kind of like little tongue in cheeky because it's obvious. I'm not like trying to trick you or anything. Here's like a medium sized one
yeah.
where you can kind of see the,
There's a
sorry,
lot more
glare.
going on there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, just dropped something. That reminds me of those, like, you ever played with those little, well, I guess you, I only played with them because my sister had them, these little Polly Pocket toys, which were just like little worlds encapsulated in one little toy. That's kind of what some of your drawings remind me of.
I know Polly Pockets, and that my son once found a naked Polly Pocket on the playground, and like he carried it with him for the next 3 years in his pocket. But we never got the rest of the stuff, so we just know what she looks like.
Yeah, but it's kind of cool how your drawings are like this little encapsulated world of its own, you know? I mean, in a sense, it's just a room, but it's also self-contained in the sense that it kind of swirls back on itself. Anywhere you try to escape it, you just kind of like that slide, you just get shot right back into the same room.
Right, and I got tired of trying to make it work correctly, so then I went the opposite way and make it work exactly incorrectly.
Yeah,
But it's subtle, so you have to look at it for a second to try and figure that out.
yeah. It's not, yeah, and it's not apparent at first. And yeah, well, of course, I like the MC Escher influence because MC Escher was one of my first, I think, things that made me start liking drawing. Just finding MC Escher books in the library when I was a little kid, just the line work, the quality, just seeing cool drawings like that were
Yeah.
different, you know?
Right. It's like a blow your mind type of thing. And like, I think like in the fine art world, he wasn't really like, he was more gimmicky and tricky for a long time. But now you go to like Sotheby's or Christie's and you see an original Escher print and it sells for a ton of money. Like
Yeah.
suddenly he's appreciated again. He made a lot of lithographs and stuff. Actually, I was doing a little bit of research. He didn't invent that. He
What,
learned
the
that.
optical illusions or the
Well, the sort of the isometric optical illusion sort of started with, there was a Swedish graphic designer. His I might have his name somewhere in my sketchbook. I forget his name, but he came up with this idea in the, I want to say, early 1900s. And then these two mathematicians, father-son mathematicians, were influenced by him. Their last name was Penrose.
Oh,
And,
yeah. One
and
of the optical illusions is called the Penrose staircase, right?
exactly. And they came up with that original triangle, which, like here, just I was sketching some of this stuff. Like this triangle, that's the Penrose triangle. That
Oh,
right
yeah.
there.
I
And
remember years ago, I spent like a while figuring out how to draw that.
yeah,
And the
right.
staircase, you know, the staircase also?
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
could never quite figure the staircase out. It was like messing with my mind.
But that's the thing is like, so you start with one of those little ones and you start to learn it and you figure it out. And then you can get more and more complicated as
Mm-hmm.
like I'm like trying to figure out how to mix them up together. And eventually I sort of, like here's like a more simple sort of simple sketches, but
I love the colors on that one on the right, the bright colors.
yeah, yeah, that's sort of a fun challenge. It's always a fun challenge to like make watercolor super bright and saturated, and that's mostly just done with like layer upon layer of light washes.
Gradual.
Gradual, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what I've seen from your work before is that you do lots of light layers usually.
Yeah,
I feel like when I use watercolors, I'm just like, let me slop this on there, and I don't go at it with the same amount of maybe patience, or I don't know, maybe I started with the wrong mindset long ago when I first picked up my first watercolor. I'm like, bloop, let me like maybe that's what a watercolor painting is.
well, yours are very visceral and like you feel it as you go. Like I heard a quote. I think I mentioned this in a video a long time ago that we did where um, who was it? I forget who said it. It might have been like George R. R. Martin. There's like two kinds of writers. There's like the gardener and the architect. And like I'm kind of the architect, or I figure out what I want to do and I plan it all out, and then I just go ahead and I like go very methodically. And you're more of a gardener, where you like plant something and you see what grows, and then inspires you to plant the next thing, and the garden sort of, you know, builds out like that. So that you're sort of describing like the gardener approach, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that actually. That is an interesting metaphor. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a looser way to work, and I get so tight that I try to like move into that territory to like free myself a little bit because I get a little wound up, and that's sort of what my sketchbooks are for.
Yeah, I think I probably both types try or desire a little bit of the other type a little, you know?
Yeah, well, you can learn one from the other, like maybe it's a good idea to combine the two a little bit. Mine just gets so tight, to the point where it drives me a little nuts when people think that my work are prints. They're not drawings, because when people hear a drawing, they often just think like loosey goosey and sketchy,
yeah.
But mine is not like that because
it's too like, clean. Yeah.
Yeah. I erase the pencil and then I go in on ink and then I draw the ink lines like 4 or 5 times each line just to get it just the way I want it, and then let it dry, and then so it ends up being very graphic.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of your pieces, like there's a whole style of like tattoos, for example, like the watercolor tattoos, which involves like the splashy, loose application of color.
Yeah.
And yours is not splashy or loose. It's very clean, crisp. Like, I guess the watercolor just describes the medium. It's color in water, but it's not loose, So
yeah, it's a little bit like when I paint with my drawings, it's almost like a coloring book where like the lines are defined. That's where they are. Don't go outside the lines, and then you just kind of fill it in slowly like that.
Yeah. Well, they're very satisfying to look at. I'm trying to think what some people might have questions about. What kind of advice would you give? I mean, I feel like one thing, anyone who has spent any time making art, maybe a question they might have is like, what advice about getting their art in a show? I mean, I feel like that's a challenging thing for anyone. And you say you've had a lot of them.
Yeah. So, well, when I first moved to New York in 1995, right out of college. And the way you get your work into a show is to know other artists and make your own show. I knew 3 or 4 other artists, and we found a space and we made our work, and then we got a show together and we made postcards and we invited people, and it was like a 3-day show. And that's how you start getting people to see your work. Granted, this is again 95, before social media, before really, I mean, email was barely taking off yet then. So everything changes with getting your work out there on social media. However, there's so much competition to like get people to see your work online that, I mean, think it's still relevant to do that.
There's a real power in getting someone to see it in person. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, also, if people are going to buy it, they're more likely to buy it. I mean, that becomes less and less as time goes on. People do buy work straight off of Instagram or whatever.
Oh.
But so I would say, do it yourself. There there used to be people, and I think people still do it. When how there's like a lot of art galleries coagulate or congeal, or they all end up in one neighborhood in most cities. So what young entrepreneurial artists would do is they would get a U-Haul truck and they would mount a show on the truck, and they'd go park the truck during a gallery walk.
Yeah.
And then people who are going to see the shows anyway, they're like, oh, what's this? And they would go and see your show in the truck. And it's like relatively inexpensive. It goes up and down, and you get your work out there. That's like another way to do it.
And maybe you could have like a couple of like temporary movable walls or something you set up next to it or something.
Yeah, and show it on the outside of the truck, use every wall.
I think even like you say, there is something nice about people see your work in person. Maybe they're more likely to buy it. I've only had like one or two shows, but there's also some value, I think, to getting a bunch of my art out and just seeing it all up on the wall. Just value for myself, because usually my art is stacked up, stored. Usually the only time I see a bunch of my art at the same time is when I'm scrolling through Instagram or on my website, right? And there's just something that made me feel good about seeing it covering a room.
Yeah, and it's also a lot of learning involved, because you're like, oh, I see how that worked there, but it doesn't work there. Like you can sort of analyze it where you can see it all at one time.
Yeah, there's something cool about that. And useful.
But to go a little further in how to get your work out there and in galleries, it's like the advice is almost always, don't be a jerk, don't be too pushy, be in it to win it. Like, you've got to go to openings, you've got to go meet people. Don't be pushy. Don't, like, it's someone else's opening, don't give your postcard of your work to them. That's obnoxious. Get to know them a little bit, right? And then go to the gallery afterward and maybe meet the people then. Or, like, there's timing for everything. Email the gallery your website at the right time, not when there's an art fair going on, when they're insanely busy, but like in between stuff. Be a nice person, and then maintain the network, especially when you're coming up as an art student. When you're a student and you're studying art, or you have other peers as a young person that are all making art together, all of you won't continue to make art. Some of you will go on to do the business side of art, start a gallery or be a curator or whatever. If you maintain your relationship with those people, that's a good thing, right? To know a curator from when you were in undergrad, and now it's 10 years later, and they're like, they see, oh yeah, I remember that guy, and then they'll look at your work again or whatever. One thing I would not necessarily recommend doing is paying money to apply for a whole bunch to be in juried shows. I think that's sometimes it's not always the rule, but sometimes it can be okay if it's local. But like, to ship your stuff out, and it's just so expensive, and they're like, well, we'll give you there's a $500 prize for the top whatever of this juried show. It's still like the cost of the frame, the cost of the shipping there and back. That's not even worth it. So try to kind of stay local if you can.
Yeah. Plus, there's a whole brand of art galleries that are just essentially pay to get in, and
don't do that.
Yeah, because I feel like they're pretty much just preying on I don't know, rich people or desperate people. Because I've almost succumbed to that before too. I was like, is this how galleries work? Because I just didn't know, Yeah,
totally. I have. That's totally the case. I mean, the medical industry does that even worse than the art world, where they're like, they know that you're desperate, and they give you some quack snake oil, because you're out of every other option, so they know they can get money out of this way, out of you in that way. Um, Local galleries, it maybe makes a little more sense because at least you can start a conversation and you can get to know someone locally. But like somewhere in 5 states away,
Yeah.
not so much.
That,
And
not as good for jump starting some networking or something like you were
yeah,
saying. Yeah.
but like also like be in your studio all the time, work all the time. Like you have to constantly. The way I look at it is, I've got so much crap that I'm gonna make that has to get out of the way to make room for the good stuff. I better keep making work because that crap's gonna come out. And the only way the
Yeah.
good stuff is gonna come out if that crap comes out and I get it out of the way first, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's generally how it works.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like anytime I'm making something that I'm frustrated with or it's annoying me, I'm just like, it's okay. Let me just keep making this because I gotta get it out of the way so I can make the stuff that'll be slightly less annoying.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah,
persevere.
yeah,
And then you'll put it up on the wall with all your other stuff, and you'll see, oh, there's an element to that works. And the way I work is, I just kind of learned this word recently, iterative.
hmm
Iterative, where one thing leads to another thing, and like so I made this drawing, and I look at it, and I'm like, I wonder what would happen if I took that part and did this, and so you do that, and then I
hmm
wonder what, and then it just builds one off of the other, off the
yeah.
other.
And sometimes I don't like a piece, and then a year later I look at it and I have these weirdly fond feelings about it when I hated it at the time. It's weird. So
Yeah, yeah.
things
That was one
change.
thing a professor once told me was, as soon as you leave your studio, you have to remind yourself it's never as bad as you think it is at that moment, but it's also never as good as you think it is at that moment. It's like somewhere in between usually, because you have these strong feelings when you leave the studio. One of my favorite things to do in the morning is to come down. I now have a studio in my house. Is to come downstairs and look at what I did the day before.
Yeah.
Uh, and then it's like, oh, yeah, I kind of forgot about that. Because also, when you're staring at the same piece for 5 hours, it's
Yeah.
like you can't see it anymore.
Yeah, it's like you get weirdly blind to it or something.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, even the longer if you step away for 5 minutes, you get a slightly fresh vision. But yeah, coming back the next day, you get a whole new perspective on it.
Yeah.
It's gonna be weirdly helpful. I mean, a lot of my drawings I finish in one day, and I regret that a little bit. It's kind of the rhythm I've gotten into. They're like one afternoon drawings. Like they take 2, 3, 5, 6 hours. I just do it in one afternoon. I'm just like, I'm doing this right now. But I do wonder how much they would change, if they took 2 or 3 days, just, because of the fresh eyes I would get after sleeping on it.
So then that's what you have to do, right? You've got to, so try that. Try to do like, start with something small, like 4 squares, and put it on the wall and do one of your drawings for the day, and then come back and come the next day and then connect it with the next
Mm-hmm.
square and come back and then see what happens. And then you will inevitably learn while you're, because one of the things you do and what I do is we take so long while we're doing stuff, we can just start to think of other things and we'll figure something out that we wouldn't be able to figure out had we not started in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to just get in there and start, and then you'll start to think about what you could do next and how you could improve it, or like these questions that you ask. Like you've sort of answered the first one, but these new questions come up. Which ones do you want to try and answer next? It's like, I think we talked about once, rules. Like when you start drawing, I know you definitely do this because I watch you a lot. You sort of have rules that you're working with one drawing. Like this is going to be mostly industrial, or this is more organic, and these lines are going to be more curly, and these, I'm using this pen. You set up all kinds of different rules for a drawing. And what's fun to me is to try and figure out, I'm going to break one of these rules and see what happens during, like, while I'm making this. and then it suddenly goes in a different direction that you could not have predicted and you didn't know would have happened, and then you see something new and something cool happens, you know.
Yeah, like suddenly switching from like organic to industrial, or picking up a different pen or something
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah.
middle of it. Yeah,
Or turning it
yeah,
upside down, or like, yeah, I mean, you're super creative. You do all kinds of stuff like that, and then it just turns into something completely that you could have never predicted, and then you'll see something in that you're like, oh, I want to pursue that.
yeah, definitely. I think there's always. I mean, that's one of the most annoying things that happens to me is that I get annoyed that I feel like I'm drawing the same thing over and over again, and I'm like, there's infinite possibilities here. Why? I mean, I think little things like that, like little switch ups, bending a rule can help a little bit,
Yeah,
just to mix things up and head in a different direction when you can't make your mind do it on its own.
yeah, yeah. Getting out of your comfort zone. One of the things that I started to do a few years ago was plein air landscape drawing. It's not something that I do in my work, but it's like I learned a ton while I'm doing it. And I also, when I go to museums, I start to see a lot of artwork, like old famous work, differently, and I appreciate it more, and I can understand what it's about a little bit more. And then those are just like classic drawing skills that I never really had, and just by doing it, you like by looking and observing and recording, you just build your toolbox within your art tool belt, and
Mm-hmm.
then when you're in your studio, you may use that, like, yeah, I when I have extra time, or I try to make time just to go do it, I'll just go draw. Oh, that's a cool weird looking tree. I just want to try to get that down. Look at the weird, like, we have these trees in New York called London plane trees,
Hmm.
and their bark is weird. The bark doesn't grow with the tree, and so it flakes off as the tree gets bigger. So it looks like camouflage, like little pieces,
Oh yeah.
but it's also at the same time it looks fleshy. Like if a branch grows out, you can see like a little bit of, and I don't know if you know some of my fleshy work. I love that fleshy armpit, skin and stuff like
Yeah.
that. um it's did I just do that, or did you just do that?
No, I think whenever it thinks you're doing a thumbs up,
Oh my god, okay.
I don't know. I've noticed it a couple of times now. It's kind of funny.
Okay. But yeah, I'll just like go out and see that. I'm like, oh my God, I want to draw that because that looks so cool. And then you just keep going and it's like, oh, I want to try to compose a landscape drawing now. And then you try to do that. And the most fun thing to do when you're on vacation. I bring like,
Oh yeah, I've seen a bunch of you drew like some lighthouses
yeah,
and
yeah. So
oh yeah.
I went to, I think, Montauk with my partner, and they're like, "Oh, let's just go." She climbed the lighthouse, and I sat there and I drew this.
You're
Um,
like, I'm gonna stay here. You go climb it. Yeah.
then I saw these people. No, just um, or like my kid was in a little tree house, and I was just like, "Oh, let's see," and I just started to draw, and then I was like, "Oh, what would happen if I watercolored it and made like the front really like set like dark? I don't know,
High
just
contrast.
yeah, just
Yeah.
playing around,
Do you have
And
like a little travel watercolor kit?
yeah, unfortunately, I have them upstairs. I have a bunch of those.
Oh yeah, those are
Or like
cool.
here's are more just like
Oh, those are awesome.
playing around. Oh, there's the see. I was like, oh, this is that. This is what I'm talking about. That look at that tree,
Very
like
fleshy. Yeah.
right
It's like a
there's
belly button kneecap sort of thing.
there's an artist. I don't know if you know her. She's contemporary, and she's a painter named Inka Essenhai. She's one of my favorite artists. She had a show recently, and she had um, these blue London plane trees that were so fleshy, and I think about them maybe once a day ever since I saw the show like a couple months ago. But so yeah, she definitely inspired me.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at some of them now. They are.
Isn't she amazing?
I mean, some of them actually look like they have people coming out of them.
Yeah, definitely. Like her botanical stuff has a lot of like fairy sprites and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. So speaking of artists that were influenced by who have you been looking at lately? Or do you look like do you look people up, or do you find people that you're like, oh, what is,
Well,
for
man,
shows?
I probably should. I mean, one difficult thing for me, like sometimes I get obsessed with some artists, but then the danger is that if they, like for a while, I was obsessed with Jean Giraud, Mobius, who was he drew like graphic novels and stuff like this. And I love just like his line work and stuff like that.
He's in heavy metal a lot, right?
Heavy metal, I think, and I have a bunch of his like graphic novels. I was like collecting them.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I just loved it. It was beautiful, and I still do love it. But the problem was, I felt like I was absorbing it too much,
Uh-huh.
and then my drawings started looking too much like his. I felt like I was losing my own style. You know what I mean?
Well,
I
I
mean,
don't think that's bad though. I think, well, I definitely understand that.
I mean, when you start getting like too many comments, like "Oh, your drawing looks like this other person," when you start getting too many of those, you start second guessing yourself. I mean, obviously you can ignore people's comments, and I think it was good because it was helping me grow and learn.
Right.
But also, I feel like a lot of what I try to do now is learn from other types of art, like that aren't drawing, for example, like learn from architecture or photography, because you can still learn things about composition and line and value and stuff like that, or learn from things that aren't art, like weird industrial complexes and stuff like that, which maybe doesn't help as much with composition and stuff like that because it's just a
But,
tangle of pipes. I don't know.
yeah, no, anything that inspires you is worth pursuing for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Also, lately, the cool thing I've been doing artistically that's been challenging me is I've been taking figure drawing classes at school, life drawing. So that's been a good challenge because that's I'm drawing things that I'm not used to drawing things that I can get wrong. Even though with figure drawing it's still art, and ultimately you can still do whatever you want, but it's a different type of challenge that I'm used to in the sense that I'm looking at something and trying to more or less draw a representation of it on my paper. But it feels like a cool, almost kind of like puzzle to solve. And I feel like I'm, like you mentioned earlier, I feel like you mentioned tools and like tools you can add to your toolbox. I feel like I'm getting more of those like ways. I'm getting tools I can apply to all my other art of how to solve problems with representing things and creating shapes and forms. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, you don't know what you didn't know until you know it, and then
Yeah.
you can start using that. I'm the same way as far as like figurative stuff. I'm pretty bad at it, so I try to do it just to get better because I know that it will help things later on. Also, when I'm drawing something and like, oh, I want to add a person to this, I won't be so cowed into not doing it, thinking that it's going to be terrible or it'll look bad, because I'll start to have those skills after a while. It's
Yeah.
good to do. I used to take my kids to the museums and we would sit in front of statues and draw, the figures and stuff. And I haven't done that in a little while, but that really helped me a lot.
Yeah, drawing from a 3D reference like is because in class we have a model, but sometimes I come home and try to, you know, go off of online references, and it's so different. Like, so I can see how going off of statues and museums would be helpful too. But yeah, it is. It's weirdly difficult. Like it gets frustrating. Like I get frustrated with figure drawing in a way I never did with normal drawing,
Which
or
is
what I call normal drawing.
Yeah, no, outside the comfort zone. That's really
Yeah.
good. And it's a skill. Figure drawing, and like anything with drawing, is a skill, and it's like a language, and you just get it after a while.
I think
Like,
just got to keep trying, keep practicing.
yeah. I was actually a nude model in college,
Oh,
um,
nice.
for partly to see what it would be like, and partly because it paid pretty well at two
Yeah.
different schools, my own school and a local community college nearby.
Yeah, I mean, it
Kind of,
seems like a good gig.
yeah,
Once you figure out which poses you can hold for 20 or 30 minutes, yeah.
yeah, totally. I mean, and it feels really weird.
I bet it does, yeah.
Like I called myself the nude dude, and I had on my robe, I had it on the back like a wrestler, um, and I was always most worried that, like, when you go out for a break, um, to go to the bathroom or something, that I would have maybe a little bit of pee drip or something like that, but it never happened. That was always what I was afraid of.
Yeah.
No, no, yeah, it was never an issue.
Well, they could have put that in the drawings too, I guess.
Yeah,
I
I
feel like
probably
you put that in your drawings all the
for
time,
sure.
so.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's funny. Somebody recently asked me. I do some of my anatomical stuff is like sort of humor based, and I hadn't seen or talked to this guy since high school. He was an AFS is. It's like a high school exchange program with other countries.
Okay.
So like a kid will come and live with a family,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so we had some AFS students at our high school, and one kid, I hadn't seen him since like sophomore year in high school, and he just um, emailed me 2 weeks ago out of the blue and said, "Hey, I'd like a print of your fart anatomical drawing. Could you send me a print of that?" I was like, "What? Wait, who are you again?"
Oh, it was some guy you knew years ago?
I briefly knew him many,
Briefly.
yeah. It took a while to figure out who he was. But yeah.
Oh. Well, it's also appropriate you have your urine style gear on it. I see you got the shirt and the pants.
I do because when I have to do test prints, like I don't have extra fabric, like fabric swatches. So I just when I'm doing a silk screen, I just test it on every T-shirt that I have
So
just
you
to
just
get
have tons of gear now.
everything I have. Yeah, pretty much. That's true.
Yeah, I got the hat I got from you in the back of my car. So.
Oh yeah, it's getting to be that season again.
Mm-hmm.
Getting
Yeah.
there. Cold season.
I know. I'm kind of looking forward to it. Of course, then I'll be looking forward to the heat, and then I just keep flip flopping endlessly.
I hate the heat. I can't stand it, and it's finally cooling off here. I love that. And the leaves, I just went out to the park this morning, and the leaves are changing for the first time.
Ooh.
So nice. Are the leaves changing over there yet?
Not that I've noticed, but they probably will be soon.
Yeah.
Trying to look out my window, but I only see green leaves still. We've just had the first few cool days, last 2 or 3 days here, so any moment now, I'm sure.
Yeah. Do you go out and draw plein air stuff ever?
Mm, Not recently. I mean, I should. I want to. When I used to live in Wilmington, which is another North Carolina town by the coast, I used to have this friend named Crunch, who I actually talked on the phone to recently. He's like this 80-year-old guy who I met at the figure drawing session I went to there. He's just like this cool artist guy who loved painting. And a couple or three times, we went out to like the area of Wilmington that had like artsy old houses and trees, and we would just set up our easels and paint the houses. I kind of missed that.
That's cool. I mean, that's brave to do that, when you're not like, when you're just learning to do that. I remember being so um, self-conscious, of people like who would walk by or whatever.
Yeah, one lady came out of the house we were painting, and she was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "We're painting your house, if you don't mind." She was like, "Oh, cool."
Yeah. Oh, it's funny. I just found I had a flood in my studio, and a lot of stuff got wrecked. But I don't know if I should. None of those addresses are valid anymore, so it's okay.
Residential renderings.
Yeah, I had this after college. I went around house to house, and I would offer to draw people's houses for $100, and it helped fund my move to New York after college.
That's a good idea, because I feel like a lot of people would love to have a drawing of their house. Someone has asked me to draw their house before, but they never came back by. Because I mean, I've seen people with like drawings of their house on their mantelpiece and stuff.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that was the smart thing that I think an uncle or an aunt told me to do. go to real estate agents because they get such
Oh,
big commissions. They could give that as a gift to their client, and like $100 or $200 is nothing, for like a 30, 40, $50,000 commission for buying a, you know, $500,000 house or whatever.
it's true. Yeah.
And so they would be a good source to drum up some business.
Yeah, that is a good
Actually,
idea.
it was super embarrassing because when I did that was when that movie Crumb came out. Who I'm sometimes two people I get compared to a lot that used to bother me was Crumb for some of the anatomical stuff and Jeff Darrow for my crash drawings
Hmm.
are very like tiny little pieces. You know who Jeff Darrow is?
No, off the top of my head, I'll look at them.
He's got a comic out now called Shaolin Cowboy, but he's famous for like
Oh
uh,
yeah, I see his stuff, piles of
Frank Miller
cars.
stories that he drew. But he's amazing. Anyway, remember the Terry Zwigoff movie? Did you ever see the movie Crumb?
Yeah, there's like a
The
biopic of Crumb, a
documentary. Yeah,
documentary. Yeah.
yeah. I get it confused with the Harvey Picar.
Oh, that might be the one I saw. The Harvey
Yeah, that
Picar
was
one.
James Urbaniak playing Robert Crumb.
I think that's what I saw.
The Terry Zwigoff film was a documentary following Crumb around, and it's awesome. And he talked about I mean, he was a prodigy. He could draw. He was like a Picasso, the way he could draw as a little kid. But I just started this residential renderings thing, and I was sitting in the movie theater with my mom, and Crumb comes on the screen and talks about how, which incidentally is not a movie to see with your mom. Crumb is a disgusting person, um, but about how his father forced him to go around doing that to make money when he was a little kid.
Drawing people's houses.
Yeah, and my mom was elbowing me, and I'm like, oh man, stop it, because of course I'm like 15 years older than he was, and his were so much better than mine anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, it's not a bad idea for anyone with that likes drawing houses. Oh, I'm looking at these Jeff Darrow drawings. They are amazing.
Yeah, they're incredible. Yeah, he's amazing, and he's got an amazing sense of humor too. Like his Shaolin Cowboy, um, it's the most humorously ridiculous, violent comic you could ever imagine. Like most creative ways to slice a chainsaw through, like a pole with chainsaws on each end. I guess this is appropriate for Halloween, right? As a weapon, and like he's fighting a horde of zombies, and yeah, it's gorgeously drawn. Like I like that. I like when someone is like a drafts person beyond measure. Like nobody is better than them, and they do stuff like that. Like that's one of my favorite things. They do like awful, offensive, like
Yeah, it's like they're very detail oriented and very reined, like focused, but also out there. It's like, yeah,
yeah, but like he's got everything. He's got composition. He's got human form. He's got like he's incredible.
I don't know. It's inspiring. I'm
Yeah.
still flicking through things here. I got to stop looking. It's distracting.
Um, yeah. Do you read graphic novels?
Not really. The ones I have, I usually just get for the pictures.
I know. I generally do too, and I don't read comics anymore, except a few artists who I'll always buy no matter what they do. And there's a new one out now. It's like all the rage. Everyone's reviewing it. Is the Dan Clowes comic called Monica? You know Dan Clowes?
No.
He was famous for a series of comics called Eight Ball in the '90s, and um, the movie Ghost World. That was originally his graphic novel. It's like an early Scarlett Johansson movie.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
he did a movie called Art School Confidential, which also is Terry Zwigoff. I think directed that one. But yeah, I just read his, and like he's my favorite artist. Like, not comic book, not fine, whatever. Just as a drafts person, I could stare at his pages and his drawings. It's so beautifully drawn, and it's also loose, and he doesn't care about he cares about all the right stuff. He's incredible.
You talk about this Monica book?
Everything he does,
Oh.
everything he draws. But the Monica is the new one. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It does look really cool.
it's very cool. Yeah. But you should check out Eight Ball if you haven't yet. He had a graphic novel in there. It's kind of surreal. It's called Like a Velvet Glove Cast in Iron. And that's kind of what got me to want to be an artist, I think, in the first place. Yeah.
That. How old were you at that point?
In college.
No.
Yeah, I started late. I thought art was for dummies when I was in high school. And I was a bad student, so I didn't want people to think I was just making art because I was bad at school. And so I didn't, and my mom wanted me to. My parents wanted to encourage it, but because they saw something in me, but I pushed against it because that's the kind of kid I was. And so I didn't really start until I went to college, and then sort of gave myself permission and then fell into it.
Yeah, kind of similar thing happened to me too, in that like all through school, I never took any art classes. During high school, I was drawing in class a little bit, but it was just like a thing to do because I was bored in class.
Did anyone encourage you to do it and you just didn't want to?
I mean, yeah, but yeah, I also thought it was dumb. Like, it's like, I mean, probably rightly so. None of the guidance counselors would ever be like, "Hey, you should be an artist. Like, that's what you should do with your life."
Right. That's how you should make a living.
Yeah. Because I was going to like a high school specializing in like information technology. I thought I was going to work with computers for my whole life, be like a programmer or an engineer or something. And so then I went to college for computer engineering or electrical engineering or something. But after like 2 years, I was like super depressed and I dropped out. And at that point, I was still doing like the artist / YouTube thing kind of like on the side as a hobby. And it was some point after I dropped out of college, and I was working at this youth camp, summer camp, full time. And then after 2 years of working at the summer camp and doing YouTube on the side there, even though the internet was terrible, I still somehow kept doing it. I eventually moved and started doing YouTube full time. Like, I don't know. Yeah. It's like, I never planned on being an artist. Like, no one, I feel like all the time growing up, if you had asked me what I wanted to be, I would have said crazy, insane things like demolition expert, doctor, Navy SEAL, never artist, even though I think I had kind of artistic inclinations that I didn't really acknowledge for a long time. But I don't know. It's weird. Like, even for a long time when I was supporting myself as an artist, I still had a really hard time telling anyone I was an artist, like, because it felt really cringy and weird to me.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Because I feel like as soon as you tell someone you're an artist, a bunch of weird stuff you can't control pops into their head. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, there's always the imposter syndrome in just about anything you could ever imagine. I had this big problem for a long time where I always wanted to illustrate and then make a living as an illustrator, but then just be an artist. So I would support my art through illustration. Mm-hmm. And I was terrified of like the art world finding out about my illustration stuff. And I really for a long time, and now
your secret illustrations.
Yeah, my secret life as an illustrator. But first of all, I was not very successful as an illustrator. I do it every once in a while, but very rarely, because I'm not very good at it. I'm really good at drawing what I want to draw, not necessarily to help move an article along or to help someone else make a point. I'm better at my iterative process. I'm very interested in this. I'm going to try the next thing. I mean, that's how I was. I imagine you were in school too. Like neither of us were great students, but if we're really interested in something, we would do well at that.
Hmm.
right? I mean, that's kind of how art. That's how we followed art.
Somehow I was a good student, but I don't know
Okay,
how.
never mind then. Doesn't
No,
apply.
well, no, I'm trying to like I was a good student even though I wasn't trying very hard. Like I think I was just a good test taker or something, or I was just like afraid of not getting an A. Like I really wanted A's, even though I didn't really care. There was some mismatch of motivations and values there. There's some in some way I was getting good grades, but I still wasn't a good student. I don't know. Whatever a good student means, I may or may not have been that.
Well, I mean, if you get good grades, I guess that means you're a decent student. Mine are always pretty bad. I mean,
I might have gotten good grades without learning things. Is what I'm saying. I don't know.
yeah, I figured it out in college just because I was terrified of not graduating. So I got really scared and tried super hard and then sort of figured out how to do it and did
Yeah,
well. And that's also ironically where I discovered art. And I was like, oh, well, I wish I should have done this all along.
yeah. Well, you discovered it. It's better late than never, sort of thing.
Yeah, same to you.
Yeah. I wonder, but also I think maybe if I had discovered it earlier, had been taking art classes in like middle school and high school, because every now and then I did walk into those art school classrooms and they didn't seem that cool to me, you
Like,
know?
what were they doing?
Really boring stuff, or they're, it's like your typical thing where everyone's like drawing the same thing, and it didn't seem inspiring or fun. Like, even at the same time where I was enjoying drawing in my English class, they were
Yeah,
drawing much less fun stuff in art class.
right. Because you're doing what you want to do, where your mind is going anyway.
Yeah. I didn't like the idea of someone telling me what to draw, I guess, or how to draw.
Exactly.
Even though I don't know, it might have been helpful, or sometimes I like it right now in art school, but maybe it's because I've already
Well, you're
developed a little bit.
mature.
Yeah.
Well, you can see the future and you can see how this is going to benefit you, like learning this stuff. When I was a terrible student, I was supposed to be doing homework and studying, and instead I'd be what I see now is learning to be an artist. I'd be in my room with the door closed doing crazy stuff. Like I would break a mercury thermometer open and like make little patterns with the mercury in my desk drawer, like really stupid things. Or like I would take fireworks that I had hidden in my room and I would slice them apart with scalpel blades because my
Uh-huh.
dad was a doctor and he had this business at home, like sort of a hobby where he would make sell prints and maps, like antique prints and maps. So he would map them himself and frame them. So he had all these scalpel blades he would bring home from work, and I would steal the scalpel blades and I would take things apart. I would cut fireworks apart and like put the different powders in different piles and then create new fireworks out of them and stuff. And like that's was my training, I think, early on. Like,
Yeah. I did that with fireworks too. We cutting apart small fireworks and we filled up ping pong balls with
oh
the
yeah.
insides of them all and set them off.
And did you ever use cut the tips of match, like light on anything matches, so
Hmm.
they would ignite
Yeah.
themselves?
And pack them together. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Somehow
I
we didn't lose any fingers.
Oh, I burned my nipple right off.
How to get to your nipple?
Well, I we graduated to cutting Estes rocket engines apart,
Uh
and that stuff is really powerful. Um, and so I actually I just had a rocket engine with a solar igniter in the back, and I tapped the 9-volt battery to it, and it instantly flew into my shirt and just flew around, and it was like so fast and so high. I didn't know that it was in there. I thought it was just against me, and like you know how those engines work, how they blow the top off. They like propel the rocket up, and they wait like a little bit of time, and
There's
they
stages.
yeah, and they explode the top off so that the top pops off and the parachute comes out. And then like I thought it was just against me, and I was trying to like get it away, and then all of a sudden, poof, you know. And then I had a rugby shirt on, and the shirt underneath it was completely gone, and my skin was black.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
and yeah, I had third degree burns. So, but that wasn't even the end of my. Used to be able to go to pharmacies and buy bottles of potassium nitrate, KNO3, and that's like 70% of gunpowder, and you can mix it with other stuff to do like you can mix it with sugar and it'll burn bright red.
Ooh.
And I would so many crazy nutty things with that stuff.
They don't sell that anymore.
I don't think you can go to it's like you could just go to the pharmacy and buy a bottle of it. I don't saltpeter. That's like the common name of it. I don't think you can get that at the store anymore.
I collect that in video games sometimes.
Saltpeter?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
That's usually a crafting ingredient.
Cool. Can you do stuff with it? Can you like use it for?
It's usually for making gunpowder. Yeah, in video games.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Right on. Yeah, you could just get, and then it's just like charcoal powder and sulfur, and that's gunpowder. Although it's hard to do it really well because I think the charcoal powder has to be super fine. There is a website where you can.
All right, we shouldn't talk about it too much.
You're right.
People can look into it on their own time.
Yeah.
If they so choose. Yeah.
When we're having dinner with the kids and I start to talk about this stuff, and I just got in trouble last night for something like this. Yeah. I got to put my filter on.
Yeah, it's all right. I feel like I've definitely gone down some rabbit holes in my own research. So
yeah, you got to do it on your own. Figure that stuff out for yourself.
Yeah, that's right. All right, I'm trying to figure out. Wait, do we cover everything about your upcoming show? We talked about.
Well, just that it's. I mean, if you.
Yeah. What are the dates and how can they find out more?
Yeah, it's on my website. But if you're in Brooklyn on October 26th, where I'm having an opening, it's in Carroll Gardens. It's in a new gallery. This is the second show the gallery's ever had. Called. It was a plant store before it was a gallery, and it still said plant outside the gallery. So now the gallery is called Plant 486, which is the address of the gallery. So it's called Plant 486, and it's 46 Court Street in Carroll Gardens. You can get all that information from my website, but it'll be up for a month, a little over a month at the same gallery at normal gallery hours. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. If y'all are nearby, make sure you go. The opening is on Thursday, October 26th from 5 to 8 p.m. Scott, you'll be there?
Yeah, come say hi.
Yeah, go say hi. Look at the work, but of course, drop by any time from the October 26th to November 30th. It's always amazing. I think we can all agree to see art in person. It's one thing to look at it online or in a book or poster, but see the real thing in person is always preferable.
I just a funny meme. Jerry Saltz, the critic, the art critic. He's like kind of America's art critic these days. Yeah. He just posted a funny meme of a normal person at a gallery stands back and puts their hands behind the back and looks at the art, and an artist at a gallery like looks behind it and looks super close and tries to figure out how it was made. So if you're doing that at my show, I'll know that you're one of the artists.
Yeah, we're like getting so like trying to see the individual brush strokes and the texture of the paper.
Yeah. Trying to pick it apart and steal from it, basically steal ideas, which is what you should be doing. I
still remember I was so amazed the first time I ever saw a real Van Gogh. I saw Starry Night, and I have seen so many pictures of it, but just to be able to actually see those individual brushstrokes and to see the unprimed canvas peeking through from between the individual brushstrokes, like I feel like I'm so used to just slathering on paint and primer and layers, but he was just like, and I don't know, it is different to see art in person.
He's one of my super all-time favorites. I might have mentioned this to you, but you can make an appointment at the Met, the Metropolitan Museum, at the library, and they will pull out, like, I got to sit there at a table. They pulled out a Van Gogh drawing, and they're not supposed to, but I could go look at it like from this close, me. It was, there was one drawing where tears came to my eyes looking at it. And it made me want to draw with a reed pen, like one of those bamboo pens that look
Oh
like that.
yeah.
Yeah, and I bought one, and I've been playing around with it because of that.
I've been wanting to use those lately too because my figure drawing professor showed us a bunch of drawings he did with the bamboo pen, and it has this
Cool.
scratchy
Yeah,
quality to it that is really cool.
less control, slightly
Yeah.
less control. Yeah. Have you ever used walnut ink? It's like a
Hmm.
sepia ink. I use.
Well, the walnut ink I made myself.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. It went bad after a while though because I don't think I put the right preservatives in it or something, but it was still
Yeah,
fun.
I wonder if it's really made out of walnuts and stuff in an art supply store because it has to have a shelf life. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that from the ingredients I saw, you're supposed to put like alcohol, like rubbing alcohol in it or something to keep it from degrading or rotting, essentially, which I might not have used the right percentage or something. Or ultimately, I think I just had it sitting in a jug on my counter for a couple months. So who knows?
Yeah.
I could have just been pushing it anyways. But yeah, I used it in like one of the big like Chinese calligraphy brushes on a huge piece of paper, and the sepia quality of it was really cool.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and it gets darker if you like layer it up a little bit, so it's going to get those gradients and variations.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to dilute it a little bit, and
Mm,
then you can emphasize those second and third lines because they'll get darker and darker, but you can still
true.
real.
Like do get like a few cups and put like a little bit of water with the ink or something.
No, I would just use 1 cup with diluted ink, and then it'll get darker if you go over it twice. And then it's like it kind of defeats the purpose of having less control. It gives me more control, which is where I tend to end up going.
Well, I mean, you can kind of throttle it between more and less control, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, for someone who uses lots of control all the time, even using something that would give you less control is a good step in that direction.
yeah, and then also holding it like those exercises where you kind of tie the pen to the end of a stick,
Hmm.
and then you draw, and then you have way less control. But that's a good exercise too.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. The bamboo pen's probably good for that too because it's nice and long and yeah, I definitely need to get one of those.
I look forward to seeing your next video with bamboo pens and
Yeah,
sepia ink.
I'm daydreaming about it now.
Plein air drawing up too. Like you'll
Yes.
go out to like it's Halloween. You should go out to a cemetery and draw like the headstones and stuff.
Hopefully none of the ghosts pop out and
Yeah.
ask if I'm drawing their home.
Make sure there isn't going to be a full moon.
Yeah. I'll keep my my gravestone renderings business card on me.
Right on.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a nice graveyard near me. So
Yeah.
some of those monuments have cool forms to them. So
Do you know that podcast 99% Invisible with
hmm
Roman Mars?
I've listened to a couple episodes.
It's like a design podcast, and he has such good ideas, and I always think like, oh, this would be a good Roman Mars podcast. One I always think of is the architecture of mausoleums and like little buildings in cemeteries over time. Like, what are the trends, and like why do people do certain things? And because they're always so disparate and like strange, and like what's behind that? Like, I'd love to know more about that.
You're right. There is a wide variety of things. Also, I think a big part of it is that almost nobody says no to somebody who's asking for something weird,
Yeah,
for like a dead loved one.
yeah,
You know, if someone has something in mind that they want, they're like, no, I want this. Whoever's in charge of getting it done for them is like, okay, we'll figure it out. You know,
there's so many cemeteries here.
I could
there's
be
so
wrong.
much there's so much variety, and this is such an old city that it's cool to see. You can see trends like cemetery technology. Like you can now like sandblast what are they? What's it called with the little dots that make a picture? Ben-Day dots,
Like pointillism or
or
stippling.
not stippling. It's like
Uh,
the way a newspaper prints things.
oh yeah, like dot matrix printing or
Yeah,
something.
sort of like that, where they can like make a portrait of someone's face, like in granite, just it looks like it's carved, but it's actually
Just a bunch of
sandblasted.
dots. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's so detailed. It looks like a photograph. Like they actually
Wow.
do photographs on granite of this stuff. So that's like a trend now within like certain Eastern European families.
You can use that to date the tombstone or
Yeah,
whatever because it's a
yeah.
newer technology.
Plus the
Plus,
date on the tombstone.
plus the data. Well, yeah. If you want
Yeah,
to go
but
the easy way.
but some of them are so old you can't even find the date on them.
Hmm.
Like some of the limestone ones, and
Yeah,
yeah,
some of them are like sinking into the ground and stuff.
yeah,
It's crazy.
or they've been repaired, or like with like an iron, like they were repaired like in 1890. So there's like a rusty iron thing holding two pieces of stone together. Those are cool.
Hmm. Some of them just like look like weird decayed teeth just sticking out of the ground. Like it's just
Yeah,
like a shard of stone if they're really old. It's
yeah, yeah.
yes.
Next time you're in New York, we should go to Greenwood Cemetery and draw.
I feel like that's the name of the cemetery in Wilmington I used to go to. Maybe that's just what they
Like
call all cemeteries. But yeah, I'm definitely down. I love going to cemeteries.
I think that's one of the oldest, most famous ones in the city. They've got a lot of really interesting people buried there. You can go find like artists are buried there, and yeah, it's like a Disney World of a cemetery where there's like it's huge, and it's like 4 miles around it,
Wow.
and like there's hills, and there's like different, like these are the little Civil War military ones, and these are like these weird mausoleums over here, and it's
Hmm.
like it's really cool.
Also, I think it's cool because it's kind of like, you know how if you don't want to bite off too much, you can just do a little doodle or something. The
Yeah,
cemetery is kind of like that. You can just choose one little crazy ornate headstone or something. You don't have to draw a whole big building like you might get overwhelmed if you're out in the city or something. Little
yeah.
bite-sized drawings, or you can draw a whole cluster of things. But
But
yeah,
start with one, and if you want, expand out.
hmm, yeah, it's probably a cool thing about it.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you talking to me about this stuff. It's fun.
I know I think we got a lot of good stuff covered here. Make sure you all leave any comments down in the, well, leave any questions down in the comments. I'm sure Scott and I would be love to read them. Thank you all for listening. Make sure you check out Scott's website, Instagram, and if at all possible, I'm sure there are some of you in New York, around Brooklyn. Go to his show, go meet him at the opening, say hi, don't be shy. I know I've seen some of you at one or two of my shows, and it was wonderful to see you. Just go up and shake his hand like you did with me, and it'll be wonderful. So, yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, Scott, any final words?
Just keep drawing.
Keep
No,
drawing.
thank you.
All right. Yeah, I agree. Keep drawing, everyone. Keep making stuff. Don't overthink it, right? Just, I
Yeah.
mean, if you want to overthink it, that works too sometimes. I don't want to tell you what to do, but if it's stopping you from making something, don't overthink it. I don't know.
Just make sure you're doing it.
Just do something. Yeah. All right. Goodbye, Scott. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Have a
Thanks.
good day. Bye.